Hey, good morning, everybody. Hopefully it's morning here. Maybe it's afternoon where you're at, but welcome everyone. We're really thrilled to have you here today. I'm Mike Ford, principal here at Simplicity Glendale, and I want to welcome all of you. We have some, I'll remind you, first of all, you are all muted. As we go through the presentation, if you have questions, please use the Q&A box to put your questions in, and we'll get to as many as possible on the call, and we'll make sure that you get them answered if we don't get to all of them. And we've got several guests today, special guests, and I want to introduce Mr. Eric Thibault, Vice President of Global Atlantic and our Regional Director. I'm going to let Eric take over and introduce the rest of the team.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning and or afternoon to everyone. I'm Eric Thibault, as Mike mentioned, Regional Director at Global Atlantic, covering both annuities and life. I have two special guests with me today as well. I have Patrick Scanlon. He's with Global Atlantic Consultants. And then I also have one of my sales partners on the phone, Brian Thomas. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and let Patrick let you take it away.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you, Mike, and thank you all for dialing in here this morning or this afternoon. We're really excited to be able to present this topic to you. And before I get into it, we had that nice little hold music. So hopefully everybody enjoyed their Memorial weekend. For anybody that wants that playlist, it's actually Amazon's Grill and Chill. And so, I share that with you because now we're technically in the summer months. And really the topic today is around long-term care and just an idea and a way that we can stay in touch with our clients and our prospects during the summer months. And so before I get into the topic of long-term care, Eric had mentioned that I am part of Global Atlantic Consulting. And so just so that you're aware, we're a team that works with Eric and works with you as the agents, as the business owners, to really help you in all facets. And so, what our role here is within Global Atlantic and the services that we provide is we have different programs that are based on research, and really we scale the landscape of financial services to help financial professionals just like yourself understand that if we look at this from a business perspective, how can we grow our business? How can we help better serve our clients? How can we help better serve our prospects? And, when we think about this from a business standpoint, obviously we want to retain the client base that we have, but we also want to continue to grow and continue to bring in new assets and new clients. And so we have multiple programs. Today, obviously, is long-term care, but just to give you an idea of some of the others that we're sharing with, and we've had some significant success over these past 12 to 18 months. A couple that we're actually just introducing now is the Why She Chooses You program. This really focuses on examining the female investor profile. And so what this does is this is not a women in investing type program, but what it does is it helps to understand what women are looking for in a financial professional and how to not only continue to build and strengthen relationships that you already have, but also using this as a way to bring in additional opportunities, additional clients and prospects and things of that nature. The Fragile Decade presentation is another presentation we've had a lot of attraction towards. This really focuses on the decade around someone's retirement. It's the 5 years before and the 5 years after retirement. When we think about it, a lot of times as individuals are getting up to that finish line for their working years, there's a lot of checklists. There's a lot of things that need to be done, but then also getting through retirement is a different process than getting to retirement. Many people are excited to get to retirement, stop to work, but after the year, 2 years, or 3 years in, and this program helps you as the financial professional, help your client navigate those 5 years before and 5 years after. Additionally, what we've seen during the pandemic is words matter more than ever these days. So maybe we're not able to be as face-to-face as we would like. Hopefully that's going to be changing here in the coming months. But what we've seen during the pandemic is that the words that individuals are using are more impactful now than ever. We talk about it's not what you say, but it's how you say it. And it's not what you say, but it's what's being heard. And so we have a program that talks about words to use and words to lose to help gain more favorable attraction. What we've really seen, though, over the past 6 months is the ability to connect not only with clients but also prospects towards virtual events. And I know a lot of us have been sitting at home for 12 to 18 months in this virtual, and we're getting out of this landscape. But Many of you may or may not be Zoomed out or webinared out, but I can tell you that a lot of clients, a lot of individuals are not. And I take my mother as an example. She's a 72-year-old. She's retired, and she enjoys nothing more than timing face with her grandchildren. And I say timing face because my mom can't say FaceTime correct, but she loves it. She enjoys it. She likes not having to get ready and get out of the house. So a lot of the meetings that she's been having, not only financial, but just across the board, have been virtual. And so what we wanted to help you today is really present a topic that focuses on long-term care. But I had offered long-term care. I wholesaled long-term care. I sat on the other side of the desk. And what I found is that in the discussions around long-term care, if we're not taking a step back and helping our clients and prospects understand what we're referring to when we use the words long-term care, it doesn't matter if we're talking about the solution. If we don't address perceptions and realities, it can quickly derail the conversation. So this presentation really focuses on identifying not only what the perceptions are just across the board, but then clarifying the realities and the steps that you can take to prepare. So for those that are familiar with the long-term care industry, have these conversations consistently with your clients, a lot of this will be a refresher. It'll be a good reminder. For those that are getting a little bit more comfortable in long-term care, maybe you're just entering the business, this is a very good approach and a very good way to have these conversations. So what we're showcasing here today is a client presentation. I believe we have a couple of dates set here in the near future. I'll let Eric touch on those. But this is the presentation that we will be conducting, that we will be sharing, that you can then introduce to your clients and prospects and actually invite them in on the call to hear this content. I'll be presenting the same content, albeit it'll be more from a consumer conversation rather than to you as financial professionals. So with that, let's jump into it. And I'll tell you, my experiences is that I've had a lot of experience with long-term care. I've been in the long-term care industry for over a decade. My mother actually was an RN, so I'm the son of a nurse. And so while she started off her career working in the emergency room in downtown Philadelphia, as her career progressed, she was actually providing home health care. And so I still remember it to this day. My mom picking me up from grade school, sitting in her car, supposedly supposed to be doing my homework while my mom was going in and doing these appointments. We had my grandfather with a hospital bed set up in our living room when I was 7 years old. My mother was in the medical field. She had the time. She had the ability to actually care for him for a year and a half. Well, fast forward when my mother's mother, my grandmother, needed care. Unfortunately, my mother was retired. She wasn't able-bodied. She wasn't able to provide the same quality care that she did for her father-in-law to her mother, and so we had to have her receive a significant amount of time of care in nursing home. I share these perspectives with you because these are mine. These are not everybody's. And so it's very, very important to understand what your client or prospect already knows or already thinks about when it comes to the words long-term care. And so what we say is whenever you're starting off the conversation and you want to set the base, I get the question a lot of times, where do we start? And the easiest way is to start with this question. When you hear the words long-term care or these LTC, what comes to mind? And another way you could phrase this is, do you know anybody who's needed care, personally, professionally? Have you been affected either directly or indirectly? And what was that situation was like? And what you can do and what this question allows is you don't have to be a long-term care expert. You don't have to be updated on the stats. But what you can do is ask that question and then just sit back and see what they already know about long-term care. Maybe they had a positive experience. Maybe it was a negative experience. Maybe they have certain perceptions that may not be the full picture. And I'll tell you, we ask this question many times within client events, both live and virtually, and inevitably, the number one comment I always hear associated with long-term care is nursing homes. And what we've seen during the pandemic is the high mortality rate within nursing homes. And so most individuals are trying to avoid nursing home care at all costs. Some say, you know what, I won't need long-term care. Since I associate long-term care with nursing home, I won't need it. So maybe I'll just bury my head in the sand. I'll rely on my children. I've got money saved away. I'm not going to need it. And so that can be challenging, but we'll get into that a little bit later. And then obviously when we think about long-term care is not as exciting and something to look forward to as retirement. Obviously when you retire, you gain your freedom, you're able to travel more, you're able to do things that you may not have been doing during your working years. And I don't want to think about being sick or having, some type of condition. And the realities is that, when you've seen it, whether it's something through Global Atlantic, or really any long-term carrier, to be honest, you're always going to see this number. You're always going to see this statistic that 70% of us are going to need care. And while that may not be new, what I will share is that this number, this statistic, never sells any long-term care insurance. You know, it may due to an actuary or an engineer or somebody who's statistically, but if you say to an individual that there's a 70% chance you're going to need care, psychologically in their mind goes to, well, what if I'm the 30% that doesn't? What happens then? So does it really matter what you say next from a planning perspective? But to understand the chances of needing care, but also understand that for those individuals that plan, for the 70% of people that need care, if they put a plan in place, chances are nursing home won't even be in the scope or in the landscape, because when we look at all long-term care services across the country, over half of it is taking place in home. I will tell you this number is actually a lot higher today due to unpaid care that's being provided, and I'll comment in another slide. But over half of long-term care services taking place in home. Another roughly 20 to 25% is taking place in community care. So think about these residential care communities, assisted living, senior living facilities where they have a nurse on aid or someone on aid that can provide care, but you move in independently, you're living in independently, and you can call somebody to come in. So really, it's only about 20 to 25% of long-term care services is actually nursing home care. And so if you're talking about long-term care as nursing home care, you're really doing an injustice, because you're talking about really a small sliver of the pie. And the reality is that, you know, if we want to look at long-term care and long-term care planning as keeping your doors open, keeping your options open. You know, if you don't want nursing home care, then we have to focus on, if you don't want nursing home care, where would you prefer care? In your home, or do you have an idea about one of these residential care communities that you'd like to retire to? Because the idea here is that, you know, long-term care, it's not necessarily medical care, but it's things we do each and every day. And so for those that are familiar with long-term care, you know, you have the physical needs, the activities of daily living, or ADL, so taking a bath, getting dressed in the morning, using the restroom, getting in and out of a bed or in and out of a chair, eating. These are the physical needs. But I will share with you that what we've seen, especially with trends, is that the need of long-term care for today's generation is not the same as the previous generation. In fact, when you look at medical advances today, they're much more efficient than they were 10, 15, or 20 years ago. And I'll give you a great example that many of us may be able to relate to. And if you look at hip replacements or knee replacements, let's look at knee replacements for a second. If you were to have a knee replacement in the 1980s or the 1990s, typically it was about a week or more before you were walking on your own. Usually it was a few months before you were walking unassisted, and it took years to get back to the same level that you were prior to the surgery. However, because of the medical advances that exist today, for anybody that has a knee replacement today, chances are you're probably going to be walking the same day. Usually after about a week or so, you're walking unassisted, and within a month, you're in a much better situation than you were prior to the surgery. And I share that with you because when we look at the previous generation, they might need help with getting in and out of the bed or in and out of a chair or getting in and out of the tub. But now, due to medical advances, they're helping to treat or cure conditions that may not, or that may have caused the need of long-term care due to physical need. However, what we're seeing more and more, especially trending as individuals are living longer, is a need of long-term care due to cognitive impairment. When I use this term cognitive impairment, we're talking about different forms of dementia. Alzheimer's is the most common one. You know, and if you look at some of these numbers, we know that only half of all people who have Alzheimer's disease actually know that they have the condition, versus over 90% of people with the four most common types of cancer know of their diagnosis. From a physical standpoint, you know, I have another personal situation with my father. And my father falls into the camp. He's not exactly the most healthy individual, but because of medical advances, his life has been prolonged. My dad had skin cancer, stomach cancer, and kidney cancer. Today, he's cured of all three. The skin cancer was a pretty easy procedure, but the stomach and kidney cancer was actually a relatively new procedure that when it was conducted, it actually didn't even exist 5 years before the procedure was done. So I look at my father, and if my father was born in the previous generation, or maybe even just 10 or 15 years earlier, he might not be alive today. So because his life is extended, he has a greater probability of developing a cognitive impairment such as Alzheimer's. And so when we look at this from a perspective, a lot of times individuals say, you know what, why do we really need to plan? Because the average nursing home stay is only about 2.5 years. But when we look at it from a cognitive impairment, it's practically twice that, and that's not even including home care or community care. And so just to kind of give you a perspective of what we're talking about, so when we look at it from a cost perspective, these are the average costs, and I hate using average costs because none of our clients are average. And so what I'd like to do is actually divert from this presentation here for a second and share with you a different screen. So for anybody that's familiar with this website, this is the Genworth Cost of Care website. This website here, actually, if you go into your internet browser and type in cost of care, it's the first one that pops up without an ad. What this does is this actually allows you to customize a situation and a plan for your clients based on where they are in the country. It doesn't make sense to plan for averages because these costs vary wildly. So let's take a look. So instead of looking at averages, let's take a look at Arizona. And so now we have our average cost of care, as you can see down here, for the different costs. So you have home care services, you have community care services, you have nursing home care. Now, this is average for the state, but if, let's say, for instance, we want to narrow it down into a municipality. So let's take the Phoenix area. Now you can see the numbers are significantly higher in Phoenix. So if we were looking at just the state average, as you can see here, the private one-bedroom is under $100,000. Home care services for about 7-8 hours a day is under $60,000. But in the Phoenix area, now we're jumping up to facility care significantly, and even home health care jumps a couple $1,000s a year. And so what this allows you to do is plan and customize. We have individuals all over the country. Whether it's a client or a prospect that you're working with, maybe they're not going to live in Arizona, or maybe they are living in a different part of the country. And what it does is it allows you to compare. But I want to give you an idea of how to plan for it, because way too often we're looking at this nursing home cost, and this is a glaring cost, 100, 110, 120, whatever the number is. This really shouldn't be the number that's being planned for, and here's why. If you have a need for nursing home care, chances are it's due to a significant situation, but also when you're retired and you don't need care, you have income coming in. It could be a Social Security. It's a Social Security. If you're lucky enough to have a pension, you have other retirement income coming in. Now, if you have a nursing home care need, that Social Security check or that pension or your retirement income can be redirected to the nursing home facility because you no longer have a food bill or a utility bill, electric bill. You don't have those expenses because a nursing home cost, this is a flat rate. This is room and board, food, that's all in. But when we look at home care services, this cost is on top of everything else, meaning that if you need home care services, your food bill doesn't go away. Your utility bill doesn't go away. If you still have a rent or mortgage, that doesn't go away. And so this is a cost on top of everything else. So when we break it down into a monthly expense, we can't use our Social Security check to pay for home care because that's already designated to pay our food, our clothing, our basic expenses. So the question then becomes, where are we going to generate this additional $5,000 a month? Now, depending on where you are in the country, it ranges anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000. And again, that's average based on a 7 to 8 hour a day. If you need 24-hour care, you can basically just triple that number. So this will help from a customizable standpoint to understand exactly where we're receiving care in the state and able to identify what the cost of care is in our backyard so that we understand that if we need to generate this much money, this is how much we need to target. So hopefully that makes sense from a planning perspective. But now when I move back to the presentation here, so hopefully, as we close this out, we're back to our initial presentation. So I'll tell you, when we ask the question, and I've asked this question before, if we have to generate that $3,000, $4,000, or $5,000 a month, where's that going to come from? A lot of times the feedback is, well, you know what? I have family close by. My spouse will be the one providing my care. My children, live relatively close. I have neighbors. I have friends that I can rely on. And when you take into account the unpaid care that's being provided in this country, it's significant. In fact, I mentioned earlier before, it's 56% of long-term care services is in-home, but that's what's being paid for. If you take into account the unpaid care, it actually bumps the number up to roughly about 70 to 80%, meaning that 70 to 80% of people who need long-term care right now are still in their own home or in some type of community-based care. And so again, to get away from this nursing home cost, because so many individuals are trying to avoid nursing homes, especially due to the pandemic. We've seen that happen where individuals, family members have pulled individuals out of a nursing home, caring for them in their own home. But what I'd like to offer and submit is a way that we can overcome this objection. And it's a very simple one, but it actually makes a big impact. And so for somebody that says, my spouse or my children, my family, I have somebody that's going to be able to provide it so I don't have to pay for it. I would ask them, do you really expect your spouse or your children, your family, your friends to be the ones providing you the care? Or would you prefer them to supervise the care? Let me say that again, because that's a slight distinction in words, but it's a huge differentiator. Do you want them to be the ones providing care, or would you rather them supervise the care? And think about what that means for a second. So if you're the one providing care and you're the spouse, the moment you get up, you have a chore list. Whether it's the laundry, the cooking, the cleaning, the housework, maybe getting them ready and dressed for the day, maybe just keeping them safe, reminding them of their medications, all of the things that go into providing care. If it's a child or a family member or friend, the moment that they show up at the house, they're on. They have to have that chore list ready to go. If you're the one supervising the care, you're still a part of that individual's life. You're still there. You're still making sure that the individuals coming in providing the care are providing quality care, but you can still maintain that relationship of being the spouse or being the son or the daughter or the family member. Once you're the care provider, that relationship really it's not there anymore. There is no boundaries. And so also what we hear is a lot of times caring for somebody that's chronically ill also will end up overall making somebody chronically ill. And we've seen this plenty of times for individuals that provided care. It just wears on them. And so supervising the care is different than providing the care, because if we want to supervise the care, we still want to be helpful, we still want to be a part of the life, but we have to have somebody that we're supervising and still have to pay for that expense. So how do we pay for that expense? Well, it comes in a couple different forms. And so this is the feedback that we have. We'll go through all of these, Medicare and Medicaid, the government spending, health insurance, self-funding, long-term care insurance. So these are really the five most common types. So let's break down these, because there is certain perceptions about what Medicare and Medicaid will cover. We hear a lot of times, I talked to a Medicaid attorney that's actually working to set up a trust for me and make sure that I have long-term care services paid for by Medicaid. Or I have Medicare, so I think I'm in good shape. Well, let's clarify what those are. So just to keep in mind what the difference is Medicare or Medi-Cal in California is Medicare is health care and Medicaid is financial aid. So Medicare Part A specifically, does cover temporary long-term care services. But you need to meet a couple qualifications first. You need to be hospitalized, inpatient stay for at least 3 days within a 30-day period of time. And it has to be inpatient. It can't be outpatient. It can't be in for observation. Admitted inpatient for at least 3 days. That starts the clock within a 30-day period of time. Also, you need to be provided skilled care. So not just help with your activities of daily living, some type of medical professional providing you medical care. And then also show your conditions improving. Assuming that you meet those three criteria, then yes, Medicare covers long-term care services up to the first 100 days. Now, the first 20 days are covered 100%. That's covered 100% through Medicare Part A. Day 21 through day 100, so the next 80, the Medicare Part A does cover, however, there is a deductible. And so if you have Medicare Part B or supplemental Medicare, that'll cover that deductible cost. However, after 100 days, you're no longer covered. Now, if you go back into the hospital and you're hospitalized again 3 days in a 30-day period of time after those first 100 days, then it does restart the clock. But this shouldn't be a plan. This shouldn't be a plan for needing care. It's a good Band-Aid, but if you need care for any longer than 3 or 4 months, Medicare won't really be the ideal plan. Now let's look at Medicaid for a second, because that's the number one payer of long-term care services in this country. And again, I hear it a lot. You have your Medicaid attorneys that are working to set up a trust and move money out of an individual's name, because not only do you have to be eligible for Medicaid via your asset level, but also your income level, meaning that if you have too much in income or if you have too much in assets, you're not going to be eligible. The number that really stands out is the bottom left number on the screen here, that you have to have less than $2,000 in countable assets to be eligible. That's including everything in checking and savings. That's all of your investment accounts. Now, that doesn't include your house, but it includes rental properties, vacation homes. It includes one car. So if you have any more than one car, that has to go. It does include furniture, jewelry, but things that are not nailed down. But really, when we think about it from a Medicaid perspective, spouses can keep half of the assets, but there's a cap. Most importantly, though, for Medicaid, it comes with limited choices for care. And if you want to take one thing away from Medicaid and Medicaid planning, it's that 70%, 7 out of 10 people in nursing homes today are supported by Medicaid. Just take a step back and think about what that means. For 70% of people in nursing homes, they don't have a way to generate $3,000 to $5,000 a month for home care. And how many of those individuals would probably prefer to have stayed in their own home, but the only option that they have is to rely on Medicaid because they may not have planned for it or they may not have had the resources available to begin with. So the good news with Medicaid, it is there for those that don't have the financial means. But for anybody that has wealth, that has any more than $2,000 to their name, it can't be the first line of defense. So when we look at the final three options, health insurance, it's similar to Medicare. It usually covers only short-term medically necessary care. I'm going to skip over self-fund for a second, and I want to touch on long-term care insurance because, what we've seen as an involvement is actually the evolving long-term care industry. I look back into the year 2000. In the year 2000, so about 20 years ago, there was over 100 different insurance carriers that were providing your traditional type of premium-based insurance. So the insurance, kind of like your car insurance or your homeowner's insurance, where you pay that premium once a month or maybe once a year. You have coverage if you need it, but if you don't, you're paying to be able to sleep well at night, knowing that you're covered if that event happens. Now, that was in the year 2000, over 100 different companies. Today, it's less than 15. And so what we've seen is long-term care insurance, specifically premium-based or traditional policies, it's harder to underwrite. It tends to be more costly, and because of the low interest rate environment, it was never expected to be this low for this long. And so what we've seen is even those with traditional insurance policies, they've seen some of their premiums increase. And while this can be challenging, if your clients, your individuals that actually have long-term care insurance today, if they can afford the premium increase, my suggestion is to have them pay it because there's no way that they would be able to purchase the same type of policy in today's market if they bought it years ago. It may not even be in existence anymore. And so, I share that because that's only about 5% of the population. Only about 5% of individuals have some type of long-term care insurance, meaning the majority of folks are going to self-fund. And I love the term self-insure because doesn't insurance imply that you're transferring some of the risk to a third party? If you're just going to pay $1 for every dollar of care, you're not insuring anything. You're just funding it. You're self-funding. And so what this has done is this has given really an introduction and a growth to the hybrid long-term care space or the asset-based long-term care space. And so what we've seen is these options really evolve. And so what Global Atlantic has actually done is we've looked at the option of combining an annuity with long-term care benefits. Now, for those that are familiar, most hybrid programs or asset-based programs are some form of life insurance with long-term care. And so what we find is that while those policies can be very, very beneficial for those in their 40s, 50s, maybe even early 60s, for anyone that has health-related issues, maybe a little bit older, or looking for different strategies, it may not be even an option from an underwriting perspective or availability. What Global Atlantic has done is we've combined a fixed annuity that provides long-term care. So let's take a step back and, again, look at it from a client perspective. So when we talk about a fixed annuity, what is a fixed annuity? Well, from a client's perspective, a fixed annuity, fixed deferred annuity, it's nothing more than a tax-deferred CD that's being issued by an insurance carrier versus by their local bank. But where ForCare specifically is different than any other fixed annuity on the market is that it does have a long-term care benefit that will instantly either double or triple the contract value day one for long-term care expenses. Day one, meaning that for somebody that has $50,000, it instantly day one turns into $100,000 or $150,000 based on their approval. Ryan will get into a little bit of the approval here during his session. But keep in mind, where we've seen a significant success with these type of programs is that one policy can cover two individuals, can cover spouses. And I want to bring you back to one of the statistics I shared earlier and the fact that 70% of us will need care. But now if you're looking at a couple and the chances that at least one of them needs care, the chances that both of you will need care, it's just about 50%. The chances that one of you needs care, it's over 90%. So the chances that you'll actually use the policy are pretty good. Now, I know a lot of policies have couples discounts where, they may decrease your premiums or increase your coverage. This is not that. This is one pot. It's one pool that either spouse can draw down from. And so because it is long-term care, it is income tax-free. Now, what I've seen in the industry is that typically those that want long-term care coverage, one of two things has happened. If you're being approached by a client or prospect unprompted about needing long-term care, one of two things has happened. Either that person has had a deep personal experience with somebody who's needed care, and their approach is, listen, I don't want to pass the same burden to somebody else that I just received or that I'm receiving. That's the first. But what's more likely is that they become uninsurable. They've been healthy up to a point, then they go to the doctor, they get a diagnosis and think, I probably should have bought insurance beforehand. Now I need to look at it. Now, unfortunately, a lot of those situations end up costing the person to be uninsurable. But with ForCare specifically, it focuses solely on long-term care need. It doesn't focus on their life insurance need, because most of these hybrid programs are life insurance with long-term care. And it's an inverse risk. The longer you live, the more of a chance you're going to have a long-term care need, but you won't need life insurance need. However, if you pass away quickly, you'll have a high life insurance need, but a low long-term care need. What Global Atlantic has done, though, is made this so convenient, so simple, so easy that it takes on average 30 minutes for your clients to be approved. There's no medical exam. There's no MIB check. There's no nurse coming out to the house taking blood or urine samples. It's a 2-page questionnaire that your client would fill out, submit to Global Atlantic, and we get back to you same day. Now, without pulling an MIB, without even a commitment of a dollar amount or submitting of an application, it's just the approval. It's that simple. 93%, it's actually a bit higher these days. It's about 95% of applicants are approved. Let me give you a perspective of this, though. Our average age here at Global Atlantic is 70 years old. Average age is 70. We issue this up through and including age 80. We issue it as young as age 50. Our average age of 70. Most hybrid carriers these days don't even issue past age 70, and that's our average. To give you a perspective of this, it's so simple, it's so easy, and it's so convenient, not only for you as the business owner, but also for your client. That way they can see if they're approved before actually committing. We're not doing any extensive evaluation. It's just a 2-page questionnaire that Ryan will get to in just a second. And at the end of the day, they control where they receive the care. If they want home care, if they want community care, they have that choice. But the reason these hybrid programs are so successful is because if you don't use the benefit, you don't lose the value. Any contract value passes to the beneficiaries as the form of a death benefit. So at no point will the insurance carrier keep any of the dollars that you initially invested into this program. Now, keep in mind where this is trending, and again, this is a different type of long-term care strategy than existed at the previous generation. Previous generation, it was traditional insurance, the standalone insurance, and what we've seen is because less and less insurance carriers are offering, the standalone policies have dwindled. In fact, it's continued over the past 5 years. But what we've seen trend the other direction is annuities with long-term care riders. And so, again, this doesn't even include life insurance with long-term care. It's so simple and so easy to underwrite that we've seen the annuities with long-term care increase over time. And so I'll give you one last idea before I turn the call over here to Ryan. And that's, again, looking at it from a self-funding alternative. So we know that most individuals have different accounts. They have different investments. Maybe they have CDs and savings, different annuities, stocks and bond holdings. They have mutual funds. They have money in a qualified account. They may have some money tied up in real estate and some cash value in life insurance. And going back to that question, if you need $3,000 to $5,000 a month to pay for someone to come into your home and care for you, even though your spouse may be supervising it, your family, your friend may be supervising it, where's that money going to come from? Well, you're not going to sell off real estate. Chances are you're not going to cash out your life insurance. You can't sell your IRA, 401k. That money is still providing you retirement income, paying for all your basic expenses. Well, most of the time it's the emergency money. It's just in case money, CDs, savings, it's liquid. We know it's there. It's not earning much, but we know it's accessible. And actually, 3 out of 4 individuals who own a non-qualified fixed annuity say that they're going to use that for health expenses. Otherwise, it'll pass to their beneficiaries. For this individual, while they have $1.7 million in total net worth, they have $150,000 as their first line of defense. But at $5,000 a month, that's only going to get you 30 months. It's not even going to cover 3 years. So then the question is okay, well, what do we liquidate next? And then next, if you need 5 years of care, 5 years times 5,000 a month, 60,000, that's a significant expense. Where Global Atlantic and these hybrid programs have worked so well is in the leverage, is being able to still keep $150,000 in that person's name. But now if they end up needing care, depending on how they are approved, either $300,000 or $450,000 day one. And, I mentioned self-funding versus self-insuring. Paying $1 for every dollar worth of care, it's not insuring. But what we understand, and especially what wealthy and ultra-wealthy individuals understand, is leveraging. Paying 50 cents on the dollar or 33 cents on the dollar if you need care is much more effective than paying $1 for every dollar worth of care. Yeah, you may have to put up some of your assets first, but you were going to do that anyway. But what it ends up doing is now you're not paying the full amount. You're getting discounted, basically a discounted cost versus just self-funding outright. And for that individual that says, you know what, I'd rather just stay put, know that these multiples are multiples day one. There's no waiting period for the contract to go into effect. $150,000 turns into $450,000 on a Premier approval day one. Now, for that client that may own a 3% matured fixed annuity, we've seen a lot of these where it has a minimum guaranteed rate of 3%. And while I would never suggest to move off of that, if that individual says, this is my first line of defense, this is where I'm going to get that money from if I need care, well, at a 3% rate, that $150,000 is going to get you to $450,000. It's just going to take you 37 years to triple. It'll take you 24 years to double. So are you sure you won't need care before that time frame? But if we look at our clients with money in CDs or savings, and I'll give you 1%. I don't know a CD or savings account out there that's giving you a 1% rate of return. But even if it is, it's going to take you about a century and a half to triple it or 72 months to double. And so this is the client-approved presentation. This is the presentation that we have available that we'll be sharing here in a few weeks. But what I'd like to do is turn the rest of the call over to Ryan. And Ryan's going to go through some of the details of ForCare specifically and where you may be able to identify opportunities within your existing clientele to not only introduce this concept to, but also to invite to the client webinar that we'll be having here in a few weeks. So Ryan, take it away.
Cool. Can you hear me?
Yep, coming through. We can see your screen, Tip.
Great. Thanks, Pat. Thanks, everyone. Again, Ryan Thomas. I am going to use the remainder of the call to go through some of the nuances of the actual ForCare product that Pat started to discuss through his comments. And once again, when we're doing the client presentation, this part won't be included per se. This is more for your education, so that as professionals, when they turn to you after all the great information that Pat provides, you hopefully have some of the answers and a solution to those needs. So again, this is ForCare. A couple items to write down. So when you're thinking about clients to potentially invite to said seminar, kind of help paint the box of where this product fits, and a couple of things. So ForCare is a fixed annuity with a long-term care rider, as Pat mentioned, but also it's a single premium fixed annuity. So no subsequent premiums allowed, all up front. And along with that, it's only for non-qualified assets only. So no qualified assets allowed in this annuity itself. So two important things maybe write down as you're thinking about, again, clients that can utilize this type of leverage for long-term care purposes. So quickly to kind of review what Pat mentioned, but I think it's important. The slogan that we use for our ForCare product: more care, more convenience, and more control. That more care is the 2 to 3 times the contract value, leveraging client dollars to utilize for long-term care. More convenience, that fast, simplified process. As we know, or as you know, that if you've done a long-term care, traditional long-term care policy before, how long and burdensome that underwriting process can be. And ultimately, sometimes, unfortunately, they're declined at the end of the day. And so again, high approval rating along with a fast, simplified process. And then lastly, the more control, a couple of different subsets here. As you know, once again, going through that long, burdensome process of underwriting and ultimately being declined, and if they are approved, those premiums can be significant. And so we mentioned that because the client, one of the main objections to purchasing long-term care is, well, that's a large premium. And at the end of the day, I'm that 30% number of not needing long-term care. I just lose out on all those dollars. And so maintain that control. If you don't use the contract value, it's passed to your beneficiaries as a death benefit. And then another part to the more control slogan, one thing Pat mentioned is, the Medicare and Medicaid parts of using for long-term care, they don't have that control of where they can utilize or go to for that care. And one of the big aspects of control is being able to choose how and where they receive that care. I'll go through many different types of facilities and offerings that they're allowed to use under the ForCare product. So again, 95% of applicants are approved, and this is the cool part. Of that 95%, 88% are that approved at that premier rating, and premier is actually the 3 times rating, that 3 times leverage in the contract. And then the additional 12% is the standard, the 2 times contract value. So not only are we approving these contracts at a high approval rating in totality, but the higher rating is actually the bigger percentage of those approvals. So very, very awesome. I'll say awesome on a Wednesday because it's halfway through the week. And then this little light blue writing along to the right here, these are the types of care that they can go through. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can see that if they wanted to choose or needed to choose a different type of care other than, hospice is the worst case scenario. But if they just wanted to be doing home health care, homemaker services, which can be things like taking care of the client's lawn or things that they just aren't able to do at home. The point being, they have a wide variety of services they can utilize under the ForCare product. Underwriting, mentioned simplified underwriting. There's actually 10 questions total. These are the first 5. We'll call these your 5 knockout questions. If you can get through these first 5 and answer no to them, you're a great candidate for at least a 2 times coverage. And if you read through, I'm not going to go through all of these, but you could see they're pretty big and broad questions. Case in point number 1, are you currently hospitalized or confined to a bed? If you're walking into a facility and someone's confined to a bed, you're going to have trouble getting long-term care anywhere, and that includes Global Atlantic. So, but you can see that again, these are big, broad questions. Getting through all 5 of these questions, again, great candidate for at least that 2 times coverage. A couple notes, using said tobacco isn't necessarily a decline. You won't see that on here. The one thing I would say is if you do use tobacco and you have a side ailment in addition to that is where you'll see some of the issues, but things like tobacco usage isn't necessarily a decline or a higher rating. I get that question a lot when it comes to writing and underwriting. And there's a lot of those kinds of questions that come up as you read through these, like, hey, what about this? Either myself or Eric or Pat will know. If not, we have an inbox that I can provide. Is actually where you would send these questions to. And the underwriters are great about answering some of those questions the best they can, generally, as they come up. So the next 5 questions, these are your 5, once you get to those first 5 knockout questions, you move on to the next. These are what would dictate whether you get the 3 times benefit or the 2 times. Again, if you get through these, great candidate for 3 times coverage. Very high approval rating at this particular point in the process, but these are a little more drilled down on bigger, types of diseases that can be involved. If you answer yes to one of these questions, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to get approved. You just may be a better candidate for the 2 times versus the 3 times. So I get that question very often. And then the one other additional underwriting portion, Pat mentioned one of the biggest things that come up in underwriting are actually cognitive issues versus all the physical attributes. And so if you're over age 70, which is where, again, we get a lot of our approvals at, there is a cognitive phone call. It doesn't take very long. I've actually done it. And the client would go through that again for over age 70. Pat showed a similar slide a moment ago, and I think it's very powerful. When you look at low yielding investments, and we see it around 70% of people who have annuities actually have a plan, especially lower yielding ones, to use them for some kind of health related instances that may come up. And so again, leveraging dollars, that $50,000, $100,000 in those lower yielding investments before turning to things like their higher yielding stocks, the stocks they like, that are giving that higher return to live on, or selling real estate forbid. They don't want to sell their home to pay for long-term care. And so again, this is the best way, or a great way, to leverage those assets that are not yielding that big return anyway, and using that as a 1035 opportunity. And I'll get through a kind of a sales idea of where this fits in a moment. One calculator that we have, when again, I can get you access to this, very powerful as you're looking at showing client how long self-funding versus using that leverage in ForCare and driving that message home. So for instance, in this example, the premium that they're going to pay is $300,000, and we're assuming they get approved that premier. If they were to take that $300,000 of premium and have to pay the maximum $12,500 monthly benefit for receiving care, that $300,000 is going to last roughly around 24 months, if that, as that blue bar line indicates over to the right. And so that's the length of time that would, again, last using the monthly maximum benefit. If they were to utilize and triple the benefit using ForCare, there's an additional 48 months of care that we can provide, and that leverage of a full 72 months of care. And so you can show the client, hey, by just taking that same amount of assets that you're planning on using potentially for long-term care anyway, if it came up, emphasis on if it came up, why not maintain control of that asset with ForCare? If you don't use it, get the contract values passed on to the beneficiaries. But if you need to, you have leverage to carry that benefit additional 48 months. Kind of a no-brainer there. I mentioned a 1035. So this product is actually 1035able. And so in this example, someone had a $150,000 non-qualified asset. They let it grow to $200,000 over X amount of time. So there's $50,000 of tax deferred growth in this contract. We all know if we pull that money out for long-term care or any other kind of purpose, we're going to be taxed on that money, right? And so that $200,000, depending on tax brackets, but roughly here is maybe $188,000 they could actually use for said long-term care or anything else. If we 1035 that full $200,000, that tax deferred $200,000 over into our ForCare product, and utilize that triple benefit, now we've tripled the benefit up to $600,000 for leverage. It all comes out tax-free because of the lovely Pension Protection Act that this product falls under. And we've also allowed them to get an additional $12,000 because that tax deferred growth now becomes tax-free in our ForCare product when pulled out for qualified long-term care expense. And so again, just like to emphasize, if you're thinking about clients who have those lower yielding investments, fixed annuities, CDs, things that are 1035able without having to take, savings account assets or any of those other kinds of assets, even though we will take those, this is maybe an easier way to transition that sale and help your clients benefit from that leverage. I know we're getting close to time here, so I'll wrap with this. Along with that calculator that I mentioned, as we're promoting this client-facing seminar with Pat, which I think is great, coming up in a week or two, we can actually leverage videos as well. We have client-approved videos on our website that you can send to your client saying, "Hey, thinking about you guys, I think this is a great time to look at some of your lower yielding investments for that leverage. Here's a quick video to watch. It's 3 minutes 23 seconds on here. Watch this and see if we can get some interest." And we have a webinar coming up that really builds a lot of knowledge around the long-term care discussion and where maybe I think we should lead some of our next planning steps to. And so I'll leave with that. Eric, I'll turn it back over to you, I believe, for finishing comments and/or questions. Happy to answer any questions that came up as well.
Ryan, thank you very much. Great job. Pat, always amazing. Thank you both for joining all of us today. I guess before I give out the dates and reminder, one thing, if you go back and think about the knockout questions that Ryan covered, right? if you were at the beginning of your career today, and I was, let's say, your mentor, your trainer, and I would say, hey, take an application out with you or these knockout questions to go market, you'd say, you're crazy. Why would I want to? That's the worst. It's kiss of death marketing with an application, if you will. No, not really. So kind of your homework is those first 5 questions, remember, if you can answer no to those 5, you're automatically in. Then it's a question, as Ryan mentioned, of 2 or 3 times. So I'm sure each one of you can probably go through your book and find several potential prospects. So what's next for us? Next is going to be June 16th and June 23rd at 10 a.m. Same time, same bat channel. You're going to receive another invite and registration process where your client can also register as well. Make sure to please remind your clients and prospects there's going to be a section in the registration for your name as their advisor. Please make sure that they put your name in there too. So again, June 16th and 23rd, we'll be back and look forward to being on the seminar with you and your clients. Mike, do you have anything you would like to add?
Yes, thank you, gentlemen. Awesome presentation. You will have that link for those upcoming webinars by the end of day today or first thing in the morning with instructions. And we're excited to, I know Eric was telling me that they've had great success with this program so far, where actual cases are being written, and we really want you to be able to participate in that and make that happen. I apologize, I didn't put our phone number anywhere on here. Most of you know us, but our 800 number is 1-800-944-1831. 944-1831. If any of you have questions, please give us a call. We're happy to talk to you about and answer any other questions that come up and help you to get your clients on these upcoming 2 webinars. So with that, I think we're good to go. Anything else? Okay, great. Thanks everybody for joining us and hanging in there with us, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in a week or 2. Bye-bye.